What's good? How y'all doing this evening?
Welcome to the FILA Sports Podcast. That's the Forever I Love Atlanta Sports Podcast, special Wednesday edition, our first college rivalry week show. Super excited. We're talking college football today. It's your boy, Coach Mario, and my co-host, Don. What's going on, Don?
What's good? How y'all doing this evening? Glad y'all can join us on this first edition of Rivalry Week. You already know college football is back. And we had to hold ourselves back a little bit because we love football, but we really love some college football even more. So we had to create a whole show dedicated to college football because you already know the city of Atlanta, the whole state of Georgia, we all either Bulldog fans or we Tech fans or we Southern fans or we Panthers, Georgia State Panthers fans.
Maroon Tiger.
Valdosta State.
Clark Atlanta,
Kennesaw State, whatever school you rep.
Georgia Military.
North Georgia. I know North Georgia ain't got no football team, but they gonna get one soon though. Whatever school you rep, we got you. We got you. I promise you. Just enjoy the show. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. You do not want to miss this show every single Wednesday if you're a college football fanatic. All right, share this video out with all the other Atlanta or Georgia sports fanatics. All right, hit that like button and hit us up in the comment section and we'll get back with your comments. If you're joining us live, tell us what's good in the chat and we'll get back with you. All right, and as always,
come holla
at your hometown sports podcast.
We have two guests with us today. Tomorrow's kicking off college football. Georgia Tech versus Clemson, ACC network initial game. We're going to get into all that talk. We have two guys here who know a ton about Clemson football and a ton about college football in general. And we'll let them introduce themselves and let you know where you can find them at and find more about them. Jeff, you can go ahead and kick it off and go first.
Man, what up, everybody? I appreciate the love. I appreciate you guys having me on your first ever college football edition of the Forever I Love Atlanta podcast. I appreciate that. You can follow me on Twitter at jben1980. And you already know we talk a lot of college football, a lot of Falcons, a lot of Clemson. I did talk some Georgia Tech stuff, but we got you covered over there as well.
What's up?
All right, gentlemen, my name is Rob Sanders. I work for Fox Sports Radio in Columbia, South Carolina. I cover South Carolina and Clemson as well as just about everything else. My show is 3 to 4 every day. I also do the Rob and Conrad podcast. I have a sorry South Carolina fan that used to be a quarterback for the Gamecocks that I have on a show with me simply because we have to balance out my awesome. So I have a guy that does a show with me, and you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Rob Sounds Good. I appreciate you gentlemen having me on your show, and I am here at your leisure. So let's get with it.
Hey, Rob, do you know Federer gets you everywhere? Nice shirt.
There you go, man.
He had to represent. He had to represent.
A little note here. I know this is college football stuff, but I am more of a baseball guy than anything. I will go and sit in February at Founders Park in Columbia and watch South Carolina play Georgia State in baseball or whoever. It could be 8 degrees out there. I'm out there watching baseball. So, but I think I'll hold my own on the college football front.
Okay. All right. Well, we're gonna get right to it. If you didn't know, if you've been under a rock, the ACC network launched last week. And I watched the first day about 15 minutes, just the graphic before my dumb behind figured out, oh, it's just the graphic. I'm really embarrassed how long I watched it before I figured out, oh, it's just going to keep doing it. How long it took me before I figured it out. But
that's amazing.
The first game, the first actual real live contest will kick off tomorrow, and we have Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets versus the Clemson Tigers. First off, we'll say Georgia Tech head coach, new coaching staff. They're bringing in Jeff Collins. He's been at Tech before. He's coached defense at Florida, at Mississippi State, He was the head coach at Temple last year. Big job coming in, turning Tech around because we know the roster challenges facing him. And like I say, big job for Jeff to step into. We don't expect the other team's head coach, who is Devereaux Swinney, to have as much problems tomorrow. So first off, just you guys' initial thoughts on the game tomorrow. Rob, I'll start with you.
Well, I think that I did get to go to ACC kickoff in Atlanta, and I got to interview Coach Collins. My first vibe from him was, this guy is a leader of men. You can tell that from the absolute start. He sits down, you ask him a question, and he locks eyes with you, which is a trait that a lot of people don't do nowadays. My grandpa kind of beat that into me. You look a man in the eyes when you're talking to him, but he was just the vibe I got from him was he's a leader of men. He talked about the process that he has, and he talked up his players. And so I got a good vibe from him. But on the other hand, following Clemson, I understand what he's trying to do. And there are a lot of teams that are trying to take down Clemson. I think Georgia Tech's going to have a tough time tomorrow. They haven't won at Death Valley since 2008. Clemson's won 7 out of the last 9 in the series. So it's been kind of one-sided. Even though Tech leads the overall series, I just think that right now, especially with that the new offense that Tech is putting in and all the dogs that Clemson has right now, I think it's going to be a tough road to hoe tomorrow for the Yellow Jackets.
Yeah.
You know, for me, and I'll start with Jeff Collins. I loved the hire. I loved it when they had made the announcement. But here's what I've loved the most about Collins is he's embraced the 404. He has embraced Atlanta, which nobody at Georgia Tech has done in decades, right? Decades. And the feeling you got from Georgia Tech people was if your dad or your mom or your aunt, your uncle weren't an alumni, they didn't want you. They didn't want your money. It wasn't good enough. And Collins has come in and said, I don't care where you're from. I don't care what you look like. I don't care what your background is. If you want to give us your money, I will absolutely take it. And then along the lines of Dabo Swinney with that, he's about the details. And that's what separates program these days is details. And, as far as the game, look, I said this the other day, I think at the end of the first quarter, it'll be 3-0 Clemson. It's going to be very slow. Yes, this offense has a lot of weapons. They haven't played ball in 9 months. They're not just going to come out and pick up where they left off in the third quarter against Alabama. I see them being up 3-0 at the end of the first. I see it being a 30-3 halftime score. And if you've watched Clemson over the last 9 years under Dabo, you already know starting the third series, he's going to empty the bench. He gets a lot of young guys playing time very, very early so that when they get to that 13th, 14th, 15th game, they've got a lot of guys who have that are battle-tested and ready to go. So I think from that standpoint, it's going to get lopsided, but it'll be a lot closer than people think.
When I think about that, though, I mean, you're exactly right with Swinney emptying out the bench. But I think the Georgia Tech defense, with having to face a more typical offense, I think it's going to help them a little bit more than people think. And I think that timing is one of the first things that may be off a little bit with the offense. Clemson, of course, is having a new left tackle with Mitch Hyatt. I think he's still playing for the Cowboys. But, Clemson has to work that in. And I think that stuff like that, exactly what you said, it'll probably be close right there at the end of the first quarter. But as you get to the half, I think that the big dogs will start to eat, and then Clemson will pull away.
I think tomorrow, I don't, being realistic, I don't think Tech has any, designs about winning the game. The biggest thing is Jeff Collins. He knows what he's doing about changing the culture. He's being a master recruiter right now. I think what the biggest thing Tech has to do tomorrow, they have to make a few splash plays, and that's simply for the recruits. I don't think any of the guys that Tech is recruiting right now are thinking they're going to go out and beat Clemson right now. But right now, if you're a guy and Tech is recruiting you, basically the coaching staff is telling you, hey, look and see what we're going to do tomorrow. We want you in this position because we can win if we have you there. So the biggest thing I think Jeff Collins has to do tomorrow is he has to impress a few recruits. And that's not by beating Clemson. That's just showing them that, hey, this is what Georgia Tech is trying to do. And I think that's the main thing. And I think he'll be able to do that. I think he'll be able to do that.
Only thing I'm looking for tomorrow is to see this newly offense, this new pro style offense we gonna run. All right, if people who listening who are not, I guess, fans of Georgia Tech, we ran this triple option under Paul Johnson. That it just didn't work at all. Like we outside of 2012 or 13, we had a great season in, and other than that, like it's just been abysmal. But I just really want to see how this new offense is going to be ran under Collins. I don't see us winning. I don't see us winning tomorrow, but I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I'm pretty sure we might lose by 10. We might lose by 2 touchdowns.
I'm gonna give my prediction at the end.
I didn't know we were drinking. I didn't know we were drinking.
I don't even drink.
What you got over there?
That's what I'm saying.
I don't even drink.
Wow.
I promise you. I don't even drink.
I was gonna save it for the end, but mine's gonna be a little different than 2 touchdowns. Before we move on, let me hop into the chat real quick. Thanks everybody for joining us. Tiff Raines, thanks Tiff for joining us. What's up, Devontae? Thanks for joining us. West Georgia, Devontae. Who else is here? The Real Pat Man, thanks for joining us. That Georgia boy, thanks for joining us as well in the chat. And Rob, they say you sound like a commentator for real.
I'm doing the best I can, man. You guys got all these big voices over there. Like when I first started in radio, they're like, "You sound like a cat in a blender. You'll never make it on the air." And I was like, "Can I just do the weather?" And then 3 years later, they let me do the weather, and then it went from there. So, yeah.
This thing is when you record yourself and then you go back and listen, and you're like, "That's how I really sound." Like,
yeah.
Yeah. And Trey and Mad Mike have also checked in the chat. Thanks for
I see some people talking about Morehouse.
That was me.
West Georgia. Y'all see somebody talking about West Georgia.
It's me talking about Morehouse.
Somebody said somebody the intro is fire. Appreciate it. Thank you. If you like the intro, you gonna love the outro. That's all I'm gonna tell you. You gonna love the outro. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then Matt Mike said Tech would be interesting to watch. Finally got rid of that ancient offense. Exactly.
Now, I think the biggest challenge that Tech will face tomorrow and all season is on the offensive line. Tech, the offensive line that Paul Johnson recruited was an undersized, if you will. It was he recruited more athletic guys. They weren't guys that big, bulky, power guys, even though you would think because it was a run-dominated scheme, but he didn't recruit those big road graders. They were smaller, athletic guys. So I think the biggest challenge that Tech is going to face tomorrow and the season is just on the offensive line. And, Tech, Clemson, we know the guys that left on the defensive line, but I know some guys that they still have there, and I think that's going to be the matchup that gets exploited tomorrow. What do you guys think?
For me, when I look at this defensive line, obviously that's the biggest question that Clemson has. And yes, when you lose 3 first-round picks, there's going to be some question marks, right? But we've seen this before. We saw this in 2016 after we lost Vic Beasley and Grady Jarrett and a whole lot of other guys. All of a sudden, you had Shaq Lawson and Kevin Dodd jump in there. But now you got young guys like Logan Rudolph and Tyler Davis and Niles Pickney and Xavier Thomas. And other guys like Justin Maskell and other guys that you haven't heard of, but we watched them play last year. And so, again, it comes back to Dabo emptying that bench early every single game. These guys are all ready to play. They played in the national championship games. They played in the game in the bowl game against Notre Dame. They played in the ACC championship. So these guys are battle tested. Again, no. Are they Christian Wilkins? Hell no. They are not. But these guys are ready to play, and you know what? Clemson is at a point now where they reload. They don't rebuild.
You mentioned Justin Maskell. He's a local guy at South Gwinnett High School, just down the street from me. What do you think, Rob? What do you think about the offensive line D-line matchup?
I agree with what you said about the offense with the Clemson defensive line. In fact, the Clemson coaches haven't really named a set. Hey, we have 1A, 1B, etc. We know about Xavier Thomas, the supposed all-world prospect, got to play a little bit last year. KJ Henry, of course, redshirted. We know those guys are going to line up and be ready to go. My big thing with Clemson, and it's just for some reason people seem to forget, Darion Kendrick is making his first start at cornerback. This guy was a wide receiver last year, and I know he's a heck of an athlete, and he can go out and make plays. I get that, but until you actually get out on the field, I can't really sit here and say, okay, this guy's going to be fine. I think that maybe not so much this week, but next week, I think Kendrick is going to be put on an island by Texas A&M, and they're going to do a lot of one-on-one matchups with him just to test him and see if they can come up with some toast in that secondary.
But you know where Kendrick has the advantage is he faces T. Higgins, Justin Ross, Ngata. He faces the best wide receivers in the country every single day, and when you can do that, it helps.
Oh yeah, I'm completely with you on that. I'm just saying when I'm looking for question marks there, I'm not really too worried about the defensive line.
Sure.
I think they have a pack mentality, and I think that's the term that Coach Sweeney used after practice the other day. But if you told me, hey Rob, figure out something there, Tanner Muse kind of bothers me because what he wants to do is he wants to be a linebacker, but he's not big enough, and he wants to go and stop the run so he can get burnt crispy. You watch the South Carolina game from last year. I mean, he is definitely toast out there and can get really, really messed up. But you got Isaiah Simmons, of course, is going to do what he needs to do. But until Kendrick gets out there and shows it in a big game situation, to me, you got to say, all right, that's one area that may get picked on a little bit. But hey, if I'm the Georgia Tech offensive coordinator, I'm going to throw a Muse all day. I'll throw slants and see if I can get something on that route.
I for years, and I've been saying this, like, I'm a guy that, I believe it was time for Paul Johnson to go, but, I'm one of the first people to point out that and show people that Paul Johnson is much more successful than the average person thinks or the average fan thinks. Obviously the offense left some things to be desired, but the biggest thing that I didn't like under Paul Johnson, Tech's defense sucks. Particularly the pass defense. Particularly the pass defense. And I've been thought, Rob brought this up earlier, and I'm like, man, he stole my point. I think that possibly, they couldn't simulate what, obviously nobody can simulate what Trevor Lawrence can do, but you're not even simulating what an average North Carolina team, average passing team they couldn't simulate that in practice. So the thing that I've been most disappointed with Ted Roof, everybody they brought in, its pass defense has sucked.
Yeah, it has. But you got to think about this too. This is too, Coach. Paul Johnson, it's just the culture wasn't there, man. The culture wasn't there. If you don't have a good culture, players are not going to want to come play for you. Yes. Look at Collins. He done changed the culture. The culture is so nice. It's lit. Everybody, not gonna say everybody, but kids now go want to say, "Hey, I want to go play at Tech. I want to go play in Atlanta." And
we have, and right now, Devontae just said in the chat that the kid who decommitted from Bama today, Javier Morton, I know him. He's my son's teammate. He's at my house often. I know him pretty well. I will say that he does like Tech. That's all I'll say. I'm not gonna put his business out there, but he decommitted from Bama, and I don't think it's a secret. He said it. He does like Tech. That's all I'll say. Yeah, he does like Georgia.
Tech at one point, years ago, they weren't like top of the line defense, but it did seem like under Paul Johnson, the mentality was the offense is going to be on the field most of the time anyway. Yeah. Why not? Why should we? Being in the secondary didn't really matter. That's just my opinion anyway.
Yeah, I mean, and it was ball control, and it was designed, to keep the other team's offense off the field, but. Like I say, he tried. I mean, come on, how many defensive coordinators did Paul Johnson go through? 3 or 4 in his tenure? And,
not enough.
Yeah, and they weren't getting better jobs; they were getting fired. So we hopefully we definitely expect. And Jeff Collins is a defensive guy for y'all who know that he runs a 4-3 under type scheme, if you will. He's had been known to have a ton of defensive line guys always dominant in his scheme, so that's what we expect to recruit. But right now, those guys aren't on the roster.
But I think a big strength for Georgia Tech this year is going to be their secondary. I mean, when you look at Wanye Thomas and Tariq Carpenter,
yes.
You look at Trey Swilling, Zamari Walton, those guys were all highly recruited and chose Georgia Tech before they knew better. And that to me is going to be a big strength for Georgia Tech to build on this year. Typically, you like to see teams build from the front back. They're building from the back front. And I think in the ACC, when you're going to face a guy like we saw last week with Jaron Williams, he's going to test the secondary. And for me, Georgia Tech has a very good secondary. And I think that aspect of their defense is going to surprise a lot of people, including Clemson tomorrow night.
But it's the front four that aren't helping the back end out.
Yes,
because you and I
no
know
doubt.
I'm a defensive back guru. You can only cover a guy for so long. You don't know where
question.
he's going. Yeah, you don't know where he's going,
On offense, I think that one player that may end up having a pretty good season for Georgia Tech is Jamal Camp. That guy's completely transformed his body. And when we interviewed him at kickoff in Charlotte, he said that one of the things that he likes is, I don't have to just run down and block all the time. I can actually have the ball thrown to me. I think with the way that he's transformed his body, I'm not saying he's going to have a T. Higgins type year, but I think he's going to finish near the top as far as receptions for Tech.
Hell, have you guys seen Presley Harvin? That kid's dropped like 40 pounds. He doesn't look like a fat punter anymore. He looks like an actual punter now.
Diet.
Yeah. Yeah, he went to Jeff. He was huge, but he went to Jeff Collins and was like, "I want to make it to the league. What do I got to do?" And Collins was like, "You got to buy into what I'm selling." And he's lost 35 pounds, and he looks really, really good.
I stood shoulder to shoulder directly next to him. That dude was huge. That was huge. Like, man, you ever see that dude out there punting? You're like, wow.
Yeah.
Like, let's fake punt.
Why is the fullback out there?
Let's run fake punt power. That's not a play, but we need to put it in the book. All right, let's switch gears a little bit to do my LeVar Ball and let you guys give Clemson a little plug right here. What do you guys think the chances of ETN or Trevor Lawrence Heisman this year? Will they play enough? Will they play enough?
0%. And here's why I say 0%. And if you listen to my former radio show for a long time, 2 years ago, I said 3 years ago, Deshaun Watson had zero chance of winning the Heisman, and here's why. When was the last time the preseason favorite for the Heisman actually won the Heisman? They never have. Yeah. And the reason they never have is because they cannot live up to the expectations. Trevor Lawrence would have to throw for 6,000 yards and 50 touchdowns to have a legitimate chance at the Heisman because the expectations are already through the roof. Travis Etienne is being billed as the best back in America. He would have to run for 2,000 yards to have a legitimate opportunity, and he's not going to do that.
Second best, Jeff.
I think
you know
what?
Hey, second
Stop
best.
that.
You know
Stop that. Stop
you
that.
already know what I'm talking about. I don't have to say
Stop
it.
that.
Yeah, well, listen. I think it's you got to realize, as far as the Heisman, they are already hyping up the Oregon quarterback, and then on top of that, Jalen Hurts here in Oklahoma. Well, the past couple of seasons, Oklahoma they've been pulling out Heismans.
Well, let me tell you why Jalen Hurts has a better opportunity than Trevor Lawrence, because the Big 12 hasn't heard of defense. So in the Big 12, you can put up 40 points, and guess what? Your quarterback still has to trot out there. Once Trevor Lawrence gets to 30, that's not Dabo's MO. He's not believing in putting it on people. He doesn't really get into that. So he's not going to be throwing the ball, and he's not going to be doing it. And like Jeff said, he's going to let my boy Chase Bryce come in, Grayson Kidd, and get a little run. And who's the other guys you got as quarterback as well? You guys have another guy that I know.
Yeah, you've got your other quarterback is Taysom Fuhuma.
Yes, and I know they like him a lot.
I'm going to butcher his name.
Yeah, I know you're talking about. I know they like that kid a lot. And Chase
yes,
Bryce,
they do.
a lot. Yeah, so they got two other guys that they want to get experience because they know, I know what Trevor Lawrence says. He's been here 4 years, but stop. Trevor Lawrence won't be here 4 years.
Well,
Come on. I know what you say, Trevor, but you won't be.
Yeah, he ain't gonna be there.
In my opinion, I don't think that Etienne's going to get enough carries flat out. He's just not. He'll probably sit the majority of the fourth quarters throughout the season. As far as Trevor Lawrence goes, he's a sophomore, and I think that with the way that the Heisman Trophy is set up, and I know that I catch a lot of heat when I say stuff like this, but I think that there's a good set of the voters that are going to look at Tua Tagovailoa and they're going to be like, all right, he's going to put up monster numbers anyway because Alabama's non-conference schedule is absolute trash. He will throw up huge numbers, and they're going to be of the mentality of, we're not going to get to vote for this guy anymore. Trevor Lawrence will be back next year. So he would have to completely outplay him. I wish the Heisman voters could vote after the playoff was over, but obviously that's not going to happen. But ETN won't get enough carries, and everybody's in love with Tagovailoa.
Yeah. So, I already know what Jeff thinks, but he can tell the rest of the world. Rob, I'm interested to think. So you national championship on the horizon again this year for Clemson?
I think it's hard to repeat, but when I look at the teams that Clemson plays, to be honest, I don't see a team coming within 17 points of them until they get into the playoff. And that's just my opinion. As far as teams that can match up with them, I obviously you have to throw Alabama into the mix, but Georgia is special as well. Don't come at me with Ohio State and Michigan because I'm going to laugh at you. But I think it's that's just the way I feel, man. I'm not feeling Ohio State, and Michigan's got to beat Ohio State. I mean, they lost 14 in a row.
Look, I know that. You ain't gotta
He's a Michigan fan, Rob.
I apologize,
but I'm a realist. I know. Look, here's my thing: is if Harbaugh can't beat Ohio State this year, he needs to be gone. I'm done talking about Michigan, but I know Michigan's not going to be in the playoff conversations because I just don't see them winning out, just because they're going to end up losing a game or so.
Well, I think the two teams that can really match with Clemson are Alabama and Georgia. One of those two is going to knock the other one off. I don't know what Oklahoma's going to do. I know everybody kind of, if you look at all the experts and their picks, they have Oklahoma in the top four, but Jalen Hurts is not Kyler Murray. And he's a great quarterback, but he's not Kyler Murray great. He's not Baker Mayfield great. So you go out on the field and show me, hey, you can lead a team like that. And a brand new team, by the way. It's kind of hard for me to put them in the mix.
We got to see how he be under Lincoln Riley. I don't know.
Oklahoma's supposedly switching this year to they're going to play defense. So I'm interested to see how that's going to work out.
They should have done that in the playoffs last year. They'd have made the final.
So they're not going to give up 45. They're going to give up 39 this year. So I'm very interested to see that.
Why is everybody right?
Look, Clemson is going to repeat. I don't think there's any question about that one. When you look at Georgia and that wonderful game manager they have in Jake Fromm, he's not beating anybody. You look at Alabama, we've seen that show, and they lost their best playmaker today for the year. We've seen how that happens. Washington, I think Georgia makes the college football playoff. Washington, Georgia, Clemson, and probably Oklahoma are the final four teams. None of them are good enough to hang with Clemson for 4 quarters. And it comes down to what I've talked about several times already, the fact that you will have 80 guys for Clemson ready to play come playoff time because they will get experience over the next 13 weeks. And Georgia's not going to do that. Oklahoma's not going to do that. Washington's not going to do that. Ohio State's not going to do that. Michigan, can Michigan just quit playing football at this point? It's
about to end the stream right now.
Michigan is that guy at the end of the bar who talks crap all night and then runs out before anybody realizes he's left the building, right? That's what Michigan is. Look, Clemson's going to go 15-0. They're going to go. They will have not lost since they lost to Alabama 2 years ago. Is it going to be difficult? Yes. Is it impossible? No. And they get it done.
I believe, touch on a few points. I believe that, first of all, before I forget, Jake Fromm has beaten somebody. He's beaten Notre Dame and he's beaten Oklahoma.
He's
beaten Notre Dame in Notre Dame as a freshman. Come on.
Wow.
Didn't that team win like 5 games?
Yeah. They had 2 quarterbacks go down there.
You got real quiet real quick.
They had 2 quarterbacks go down there a year, though. So,
I didn't want to hit him with that, but wow. That's like Macho Man off the top rope there, buddy. Wow.
When we beat them, they were at full strength. They got sorry later because the guys got hurt. When we beat them, they were at full strength.
Whoa.
But I do believe that Clemson certainly will be in the playoff this year. I just believe that they will have a slip up somewhere because I just believe it's just hard to win 30 straight games. But I believe they will have some kind of slip up or that big scare. Well, every team's going to have a big scare. So they're going to get that big scare during the year. It's some road game on some random 12 o'clock Saturday where they went partying. You know how they go. So I do believe that they'll probably drop one this year. I do believe Clemson will be back in the college football playoff. And I do believe they have a very, very strong chance to repeat. If I had to pick a team right now, if you force me, I'd pick Clemson to win. Okay.
All right, this is my prediction. All right. I don't know who's going to be the top four, but I know Clemson and I know UGA. Like I said, UGA is going to win the SEC. I'm calling it now. I think Alabama's going to take a step back this year. They're going to get surprised by it. I think Alabama's going to lose a game or two. They're going to lose one game in the regular season, and then they're going to lose the SEC championship. And then when it all said and done, like I said, Clemson, Georgia, Oklahoma probably be in the mix in the playoffs. Washington, I'm not for sure. If not Washington, they may sneak Alabama in. But if Alabama go in, they're gonna end up losing. And I can really see in New Orleans, because that's where the national championship is going to be played at. I can see Clemson versus UGA.
I think what's going on right now with Alabama is, I think a great comparison is Florida State. Now, even though Alabama has been in the SEC forever, you have Florida State join the ACC, whoop everybody's tail 4 or 5 years. Nobody could beat them. And then you have Virginia clip them on that Thursday night game. I still remember where Ward Dunn got stopped at the one, and the rest of the ACC caught up. What did the ACC do? They went out to spend more money to get better coaches, and it was all to catch up with Florida State. They started investing more in recruiting, and what has the SEC do? Even though they've already been spending a ton of money now, you go and get Kirby, you get Texas A&M, you have Jimbo. I think that the other teams are catching up to Alabama. I don't think Alabama is dropping off. I think the other teams are catching up now, and in the next couple of years, yes, Alabama is. They're Nick getting a little long in the tooth. Alabama's slowing down. I do believe they're slowing down. They haven't stopped, but they are slowing down a little bit. What do you guys think?
Man, I'm not an SEC guy. I'm not an SEC homer. I appreciate what Georgia is doing. I appreciate and realize how difficult Alabama State for the last decade has been. Jimbo Fisher is a fake Gucci watch. He looks really good on the outside. He'll turn your wrist green and he'll take all your damn money, right? Like that's what Jimbo Fisher is to me. Pruitt's got to prove something. I hate to say it, Coach, but Kirby Smart, he's got to prove something at some point. I mean, you look at the handful of losses he's had at Georgia, all of them have come down to mismanagement by himself during a game. Until those guys actually prove otherwise, I'm just like, to me, it's Nick Saban is built the lure of the SEC. I'm not buying, what's his name down there in Baton Rouge, and the rest of the SEC is just, come on, let's be real. Missouri is trash. Kentucky's okay. South Carolina, you could torch Columbia, and I'd be just fine with that. The nonsense going on in Gainesville is a facade. I mean, it's just. I mean, you've got Alabama, and you got a bunch of pretenders.
Yeah, Coach Cajun, man, you're down at LSU. They seem to think that it's Cajun, man. That's what I've called him. Sorry, but the LSU faithful really seem to think they have a shot, but until somebody knocks off Alabama, just stop. You're all playing for second place until then, in my opinion. The only other team that can really match wits with Bama is Georgia, but I don't know. It seems like Georgia's got all the talent in the world. You've got all the ingredients, but you make a cake that falls in the middle of the season, it seems like, or towards the end of the season. So the Texas game really turned me off for Kirby Smart, who almost came to South Carolina before, and then he was offered the Georgia job. But Kirby Smart can recruit, but until he actually gets that big win, it's going to be like, all right, That's very nice.
Well,
keep on keeping on there, buddy.
As a Georgia fan, I certainly can't argue any of those points. We haven't won a national championship since 1980, and until we win one, I can't say, hey, this, that. I can't, like I say, your points are valid. While we're talking ACC, SEC, interesting that we have Rob on as well. This is something personally I had wanted to ask Jeff. What's the real Death Valley, or do you guys buy into that, or do you carry it all? Clemson versus LSU. What do you guys think?
I mean, Clemson's Death Valley was actual Death Valley like 25 years before LSU was. So I don't know how. The only imitation that actually is considered the real thing is the Oreo, right? I mean, the Oreo cookie is an imitation of the actual Hydrox, right? So I don't know how LSU can be the real when they're the imitation. So, I mean, that's easy for me. I mean, it's almost like who's the real USC, right? I mean, one's a dumpster fire.
That's going to be my next one, Rob.
You know what I mean? Like,
I'm sorry.
Wait, here's the thing. All right, Clemson, I never been to a Clemson game, but I seen it on TV. The stadium is Death Valley. Now, when you go to Baton Rouge, outside the stadium around LSU, that's Death Valley. If you get what I'm saying. If you in the wrong part of Death Valley, I mean, if you're in the wrong part of Baton Rouge, you gonna end up getting killed.
Oh, so it's like going to you.
I knew you getting that. You made me. I'm a joke.
So you're saying LSU has better drunks? Is that what you're saying?
No.
Drugs. I'm talking about like murderers.
No, I said
it can go down in Baton Rouge. If you ever been around it can go down in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, I got you.
Turn down the wrong street.
So it's almost like going to UAB and going to Legion Field. You make the wrong turn by Legion Field, you ain't coming back around either.
For real. Jeff teased a little bit, Rob. I was going to ask you about USC. You said you just asked you. What do you think about the real USC?
Living in Columbia, they just lost. I think it was last year. The whole thing with Southern Cal in court, where Southern Cal's like, yeah, we're the real USC. So now the city of Columbia has actually gone out and put signs all around, and the university as well. They are now U of SC, but their fan base will still be talking about we're the real USC. It's just comical at its absolute best with everything that involves South Carolina, man. They're on their own planet sometimes.
Sorry.
And they still can't spell USC, so it doesn't matter.
Sorry, South Carolina. I like I said, I know, met some of the coaches, know some guys who play there personally. I'm sorry. When I think of USC, I'm thinking California. Sorry.
Well, but that's the thing. If you tell them, hey, you step across the state lines, when you say Carolina, they think North Carolina. When you say USC, they think Southern Cal. I know Coach Sweeney said that, but that's just the way that it is. So
I'm
that's
sorry.
what I'm saying. They live on their own planet with that, man. I just let them have it.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, we're going to have Rob Sanders co-host on when we preview the UGA and South Carolina game.
And Mike knows his football. He was a backup to the backup to the backup to the backup to Steve Tannehill in like 1990. He could have gone to Syracuse and probably started, but he decided, hey, I'll go to South Carolina and be 8th string. So make sure he tells you the story about how he ran out the first time for 2001 and almost broke his ankle on a camera, and then he didn't run out for 2001 anymore. But he does know his football.
I love that. That's one thing now. I do love that intro. I do love that intro. And I remember old Motherhead Tannehill. And one thing about Rob doing the Georgia and South Carolina show, I'm pretty sure Jeff will be trolling that one. Big hard, big time. He get a chance to troll Georgia and South Carolina at the same time. All right. Before we get into some of the other college football from around the state real quick, let's get back into the Georgia Tech Clemson game, and let's final thoughts and prediction, if you will, on the score. John, let's start with you again, Don. No, let's let you go last, Don. Again. I think the score tomorrow will be 48-13. Obviously, Clemson's way. I think that'll be defined. But I do think that Georgia Tech will show some good things, and I do think, like I said, that the recruits will get to see what they want to see. So I think in that part, Tech will have a success, if you will. What do you think, Jeff?
For me, I think the final score tomorrow is going to be somewhere around 43-10. I think Georgia Tech scores a late one to at least get on the board in that respect with a touchdown. Hopefully build some momentum for them going forward because they're going to need everything they can get this year in this rebuild. But, yeah, like I said, it'll be a close first quarter. I think at that point Clemson starts to dominate itself. And eventually, again, 43-10, 46-10, somewhere around that area.
I've got Clemson winning 49-6. I think that it could get a little bit more ugly, but Dabo's not going to run guys out there forever. And I think that it's, hey, establish dominance in the first half, coast the second half, and let's get ready for Texas A&M.
And what you guys can expect to see from Tech on offense tomorrow is a mix of pro-style spread. So that's what we heard. And if you look at the offensive coordinator, that's what he ran at Temple. He does like to mix a few gadget plays in there, but mostly it's a pro-style spread type. And I do know that that's what they've been telling the recruits, hey, come play with us. You're going to play in a pro-style offense. So as far as run-pass ratio, they've been really quiet. If studying, I did a little studying on the offensive coordinator. He's been, it seems more he plays to his team's strengths, and that's what they said they do. So, but with Tech's roster, I'm not sure that's running or passing. Now you think that's running, but they're running a whole different scheme, and you wouldn't think it's passing because they hadn't done that. So everybody's on the edge of their seat to see what Tech's offense is going to do tomorrow.
Well, I think it's going to be 35 Clemson. I say 14 Georgia State.
No. You can't walk this back now, Don. You walking this back, man. Let's get back to what you said 45 minutes ago, bro. What was that nonsense? Talking about a 10-point game?
I said,
come on, Don.
14, man.
Two touchdowns. I said 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, you said 2 touchdowns.
Okay.
I retract it. I can retract it. Come on now. But I think it's gonna be like 35-14. They may score 17 points. Tech may score 17 points. Like I said, we don't know. It's the first season of the game. I mean, it's the first game of the season. All right, and yeah, Mike. It's the first game of the season. Dabo, he might not. And he playing against Tech. He might not want to throw all his tricks out there, on film because he gonna be playing everybody. You see what I'm saying? So it's 35 points is reasonable for Clemson to win the game. Shoot, they can win the game by 28 points.
I expect Tech tomorrow to go for a punt block or two. I don't think they'll go for the onside kick. I think that's a little cheesy for Jeff Collins. I don't think he'll pull that out. But I expect them to go after a couple punts or so. And I think you should. I don't think, like I say, the onside kick is a little much, but I expect them to go after a couple punts. Like I said, they're going to try to make a few splash plays. So I certainly expect to see that. All right, so we also have some other college football around the state, and we're just going to run through the games real quick that we have going around the state and just give a little brief. But before we do that, we'll check back in the chat and see if anybody had any questions for Jeff or Rob. We do have a couple. Picky by nature. Devontae was checking in saying he's looking forward to the backup running back. He went to school with him. He was talking about Brian Herring. Brian Herring is number 2 right now on the depth chart. Brian Herring's been a dog, man. He's just been steady since he's been there as a freshman. Got to Georgia a little late, had some grade issues. Came out of high school, 3-star kid, not rated heavily. Georgia saw him, liked him, and he's been there. He's just been producing and been grinding ever since. And Brian Herring is going to go in an NFL camp next year. Whether he makes the team or not, whatever, but Brian Herring is going to find himself in an NFL camp. Pig Skin Junkie, thanks for checking in. Said, do your thing, gentlemen. Thank you. He said, Ogeron sounds like a skins alligator alive in his spare time. He skins alligators alive in his spare time.
Yeah.
Hey, I watch Swamp People a lot. I'm definitely expecting to see him on the show anytime soon. Yeah. And I Do It For Jesus says, Alabama don't beat Georgia. Georgia beats themselves. Yeah, I'm sure Jeff is nodding his head. And he's saying it's changed that the OC is going to be a difference for us. Cheney going up to Tennessee to be the OC now. And Coley from Miami, who's been our wide receivers coach, he was coordinator last year, stepping in to be the wide receiver. Expects to see more screen passes and the ball in the air a little bit, which I don't believe though, because Kirby has said over plenty of times he wants to be 60-40. So I don't see how we're going to throw the ball more if you want to be 60-40. Kirby said that plenty of times, which I don't have a problem being 60-40. Just go 30 points. I don't care how you do it. So I'm interested to see if we really do throw the ball more. Greg Martin checking in. Thanks for, he was saying true to the Georgia. But yeah, you can certainly say Georgia has left points on the board. And Jonathan Foskey, thanks for checking in, Jonathan. He says, I'm interested in watch Tech run a real football system this year. Nonetheless, Clemson will win. Yep. And I think that's what anybody's looking for, Jonathan. Yep.
Look, gotta be a realist, man. Look, I'm a Georgia Tech supporter, but at the end of the day, you gotta be real, man. You gotta be a real sports fan. Sometimes you gotta put your fandom behind and just look at the facts and the truth.
Yeah. All right, we'll run down the other games. All right, UGA is taking on Vandy on the SEC Network Saturday at 7:30. I do believe that UGA will win the game, but I don't think we'll blow Vandy out like everybody thinks we'll be. Derek Mason is a great coach, and Vandy he's a defensive guru. Kirby has pretty much said that like he loved to work with Mason anytime. Like he's a really respected guy in pro and college ranks. Mason, he's a very impressive guy if you talk to guys on. So I don't think
Vandy covers.
What's the spread, Rob?
I looked at it earlier and it just slipped my mind, but I think Vanderbilt covers. I really do. I'm not saying that Georgia is, dog awful, but I think people are selling Vandy a little bit short because they've got a couple of guys that can make some plays. So they're going to be better than people think, and I think that they're not going to scare Georgia, but Georgia's not going to beat them senseless.
I think it's going to be like 28-17. I think it's going to be like 28-17 game.
Yeah. Here's why I disagree with you guys on that one. When you look at Vanderbilt, they're only bringing 5 guys back on defense. They don't have a quarterback coming back this year. Those are very essential, especially in a league like the SEC, to be successful. I think it will be closer than any Georgia fan wants it to be. I still think they cover, and I still think Georgia wins by 17-21, somewhere in that area.
Yeah. I think around there, but I think it'll be, like I say, 14-17, but I don't think there's 30-point blowout that some Georgia fans are looking for. I don't think it's happening. We have Georgia State Saturday at 3:30 taking on Tennessee on ESPNU. Interested to see what Tennessee is able to do in the second year under Pruitt. Think Tennessee will get through, and think that game will be like a 30-14 Tennessee over Georgia State.
Yeah, I see Tennessee's going to win that game. So.
Yeah.
Upset, baby. Upset coming.
Oh.
I kid. Yeah, the only upset is going to be if Tennessee doesn't have a garbage can on the sidelines. That'll be the only upset.
We also have Georgia Southern versus LSU Saturday in the stadium called Death Valley. That's also on ESPNU. That's a night game. I didn't put the time down. I think that's like a 7 p.m. game. I do think that I'm not convinced on LSU yet. I think Georgia Southern is going to give LSU all it can handle.
It's going to get them money. It's going to get them their money.
I do believe that LSU probably, will pull a game out, later, but I believe it's going to be interesting, and I think that's going to be like a 28-17, 28-20 type game too. I think it's going to be an interesting game.
And look, that quarterback, Georgia Southern, Shirey
works.
Yeah, that man, he's upset. He is on a mission after what the police did to him in South Carolina.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, like this man about to be on a mission this season. I promise you that.
We talked about culture, and we talked about Jeff Collins changing the culture, right? Chad Lunsford at Georgia Southern has completely changed that culture. And you look what he got the interim tag a year and a half ago, and they won their last 2 or 3 ball games. Last year was a completely different team. So I don't be shocked if Georgia Southern has a lead with 3 minutes left in that game, and LSU's got to drive 90 yards to go beat them. Lunsford has those guys believing they belong on the main stage, and I think they'll play like it.
Yeah. So we're all expecting a compelling game there. Kennesaw State is playing Point University. I know I have a couple old players at Point University. Saturday 6:30. You can catch that one on ESPN Plus. What do you think, Joe? If you guys don't know,
absolute trash. So I work full time as a professor and advisor at KSU, and so I'm there every day. The fact that KSU, they have finished in the top 5 of FCS the last 2 years. It is inexcusable that they are playing 2 NAIA programs, including Point. And the reason for that is both Duquesne and Furman bought out of their contracts, but KSU should never have let them out of those contracts until they had somebody set up to replace them. And instead they got to go to the not Division II, NAIA to get those replacements. It's absolute trash. I am not happy.
I have an issue with KSU football myself. I'm a huge high school football guy. I love high school football. Kennesaw State doesn't recruit in this city enough for me. Kennesaw State, if you look at their roster, ton of guys from North Carolina and Carolina. When we're in Georgia, and I look at Kennesaw State's roster, and knowing where some of the areas they recruit, they're not recruiting Georgia, Metro Atlanta specifically enough for me, and I have a big problem with that, Kennesaw State. I just got to keep it real.
Yeah, I agree. Rob was like, "Who the heck are you guys talking about?"
I'm with you, but if I can't offer something where it's gonna help out, I'll be like, "Let the guys roll, man. They're doing well." I understand you're angry though, and I get what you're saying about the whole backing out of contracts. That's something that bothers me too. So.
All right. Also in the city, we have Morehouse versus Alabama A&M. That's up in Canton. That's a classic. Alabama A&M is going to kill Morehouse. Sorry. Clark Atlanta.
I'm about to tell you that. Don't even say Morehouse going to win.
Yeah, we're going to get our head beat in there. It's going to get our beat. Clark Atlanta's on the bye. West Georgia and Valdosta State will open their seasons next Saturday. And that's pretty much, like I say, the major college football in the state. Like I say, last thing I want to ask you guys about and expand on, we talked about ACC Network inaugural game next year. I'm sorry, tomorrow. What am I talking about, boy? How do you think this will affect the league? Not just football, basketball in general. What's your feelings, on the ACC? Just like I said, immediate thoughts on the league. What do you guys think?
Go ahead, Rob.
Oh, my thing with the ACC network is eventually it's going to help as far as revenue is concerned. I think that I read something the other day that schools may not feel that extra revenue for 3 to 4 years, but the reality is that the ACC has somewhere to call home. If you've been watching any of it as of right now, it's hey, we have this nice shiny thing called Clemson that beat the tar out of Alabama. Watch this. And it's all Clemson stuff all the time right now. But it's going to be really cool during basketball season when they have a lot more ACC games you'll be able to watch. But I think it's obviously great for the league. They've got some great commentators and guys that are doing stuff there. Mark Packer, the Pac-Man, doing a show. I kind of grew up listening to some of what the Pac-Man did, so I'm all in on that. But it's just another avenue for the ACC to distribute their goods, and more players and more coaches and stuff will buy into the ACC, especially on the football end, is now more viable with that ACC network.
See, I've got a completely different opinion. The ACC network should cost John Swofford his damn job. The way he has handled this has been an absolute train wreck. They knew 2 years ago this was the launch date. 3 of the 5 biggest cable networks in this country don't have the damn network. That is inexcusable. Every ACC president should demand his resignation and accept it effective December 31st. Like Rob just said, you have the national champions, and most of this country will not be able to see them play tomorrow night because you didn't have your contracts, you didn't have anything lined up, and here you are scrounging when you should have had that done and those negotiations done a year ago for the launch this week.
I agree with you on that, but I was talking about the good thing. But yeah, I mean, the fact that it's not out there is just poor. It is absolutely poor. You're telling me that the majority of the country doesn't want to watch Clemson tomorrow night? Stop it. That's absolutely ridiculous.
I'm actually gonna watch it tomorrow on my Fire Stick. Yeah, because I get the ACC network on the Fire Stick. Yeah, you know what? Man, Jeff, I hadn't even thought about that at all. I hadn't thought about that at all. Like, but yeah, there's so many people. Like, you have to have an app almost.
Yeah.
Or DirecTV or some type of app. But if you just got Comcast or AT&T or Spectrum or that other stuff, you're not getting it.
My friend in Columbia owns a bar, and he's like, this is the greatest thing ever because they paid for the extra DirecTV, and he expects his bar to be completely packed, which is good for him. But exactly what you said, Swafford really screwed this up.
Capitalism at its finest.
Hey, Coach, why don't you come join me? I'm gonna be in Sandy Springs tomorrow. I'm gonna go watch the game in Sandy Springs at Hudson Grove, which is where the Atlanta Clemson alumni meet. Come hang with me. Come watch it.
Thursday is usually a bad day for me because I'm preparing for high school the next day, just that. But I promise you, Jeff, I will come hang out with you and watch a game, a Falcons or a Clemson game this year. I promise you. I hold you to that. I promise
Let's do it.
You know what? We got a homecoming thing on
September
21st. September 21st. Come hang out with us. I don't stay in Atlanta. I stay like near South Georgia. I stay near South Carolina, Florida.
But he's from Atlanta.
I'm from Atlanta though, born and raised. But September 21st, we're gonna have like a watch party at Manny's downtown. It's a
Georgia Notre Dame.
So Georgia Notre Dame game. So come hang out with us, man.
Yeah, but even not, like I say, even if not, I'll definitely hold you to that.
For sure,
as well.
For sure.
Don, we didn't hear your thoughts on the ACC network. Don, what do you think?
I think it's a great thing, man. You already have CBS, SEC,
cash cow.
And then you had the Big Ten network. I subscribe to that. I ain't renewed my subscription, to be honest with you. But
oh, you can't tell you're a Michigan fan and tell people you're not going.
But no. Reddit, man. Reddit. I can get stuff on Reddit now for free.
Yeah, you're right.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. You can stream games on Reddit. NFL, a lot of people don't know that. You can. Yeah.
Exactly. But I think it's a great thing, man, because you got to realize Clemson won, 2 out of the last 3 championship games. All right. You have, everybody, pretty much, a lot of people love the U. You have a lot of Georgia Tech fans. You have a lot of fans of other teams, NC State. So having a network for the ACC, man, I think that's a great thing. What is it, Joe?
My wife over here, stripping. She's trying to make me laugh, man. She's doing a good job at it. That's all.
If your wife is stripping and you're laughing, I don't think you're gonna be too lucky.
Oh no, she's trying to make me laugh, brother. She's trying to make me laugh.
Yeah.
I changed into my new ACC hat. There'll be more people seeing that than the network tomorrow, I bet.
Well, man, I just want to thank you guys for joining us, man. This was an awesome show. Like I said, this was our first rivalry week show. Don named it that, knowing that I can't pronounce it good. We'll be back here, everybody, each Wednesday previewing upcoming games, great college football talk. Come and join us. I have to thank Rob and Jeff again. This is an awesome show, awesome content. Let them know again, Rob, let them know where they can find you at, where they can listen to you at, plug anything you need to plug.
Yes.
Well, I have a daily show on Fox Sports Radio 1400, so you can find that on the iHeartRadio app. I'm on Twitter at Rob Sounds Good, and the Rob and Comrade show, I will be doing that in 25 minutes with a dumb Russian from Columbia who used to be a backup for the Gamecocks. We're going to do picks against the Lions tonight and everything else, but you can find that on Facebook. Just search for Rob and Comrade show.
You can hit me up on Twitter at jben1980. You can also find me over at Blogging Dirty, where I cover the Atlanta Falcons for Fansided. Hit me up. I love to argue. I love to engage. Fellas, I appreciate the opportunity to get back at this. It's been a couple months, so I appreciate you guys, and I'll love to join you anytime you give me an opportunity to.
Like I say, we'll definitely love to have you back on. Clemson makes the playoffs. We'll certainly have you back on. We're going to have Rob back on to talk some South Carolina in a few weeks. I have to say thank my co-host, man. My co-host hooks all this up, man. I don't know how to do any of this crap. He does all the intro, all of the outro, and my co-host is amazing, man. He's brilliant. Man, you know, I couldn't say enough. Thanks, Don. Thanks for hooking this up.
No problem. No problem.
Appreciate you, man.
All right. Yes. So I'm glad y'all can tune in to the Rivalry Week show. We're going to be back next week, and we're going to be talking about Valdosta State. Valdosta State. You know, Valdosta State, they just won the championship last season.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about the Blazers. On that note, guys, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. By the end of the week, I want us to be at 300. No exceptions at all. We ain't taking no prisoners. 300.
We'll come see you.
Exactly. Also, hit that like button. Share this content out with any other Atlanta sports fanatics or Georgia's college team fanatics. And then hit us up in the comment section. We'll get right with you with the comments. As always,
come holla
at your hometown sports podcast. Y'all have a great evening. We'll see y'all Sunday on our regular show.
Tell them boys playtime's up. Tell them put the house on me. They can put the house on me. Tell them put the house on me. Tell them boys playtime's up. Tell them put the house on me. They can put the house on me. Tell them put the house on me. Tell them boys playtime's up. Tell them put the house on me. They can put the house on me. Tell them put the house on me. Tell them boys playtime's up. Tell them put the house on me. They can put the house on me. Tell them put the house on me. Tell them put the house on me. They can put the house on me.